Yeah, I see your confusion right now. This video is called Why I Love Batman v Superman, so why the hell would I start by saying that? Half of you turned up ready for a fight and the other half was all set to cheer me on, but now that's flipped, you're all confused, and that's perfect. See, this video isn't going to be like anything else I've ever done. Not really. What I'm about to say isn't black and white, or to roll with this movie, black and blue. The way I feel about Batman v Superman, about BVS, it's way more complex than that. And I've got to be honest with you, I hate Batman v Superman. That's the truth, or at least it used to be. You see, something changed. It wasn't overnight and it isn't absolute, but something about the way I see this movie has evolved and reshaped and transformed. The point of this channel, the point of this Why I Love series, is to look at movies through my most empathetic lens possible in the hope of finding some new, deeper way of understanding why I connect with them and then sharing that with you. So far, I've done stuff that pretty much everyone else loves too. I'm kind of just preaching to the choir, and I love doing that, but this time, I've done something different. This time, I've taken a movie that I totally loathed, a movie that I hated so much, so goddamn much, and applied the exact same thing to it. I took a movie that broke me, a movie that's filled me with rage for years, and I kind of rediscovered it. I broke down all the anger, just stripped it all away, and I saw that movie in a whole new light. I'm not here to tell you what to think or how to feel about BVS. I'm not here to tell you that your anger is wrong or misplaced. It's yours, not mine. No, I'm here to share how I managed to reconcile with a movie I've hated for the last 3 years, to talk you through this crazy odyssey I went on into the mind of Zack Snyder. I'm here to say, with at least some certainty, that, hi, my name is Bailey, and this is why I love. First, let me tell you about one of the most soul-crushing days of my life. What you need to understand is, I wanted to love Batman v Superman. Not just love, actually. I wanted this to be my favorite superhero movie ever, and why wouldn't it be? I mean, it's Batman v frickin' Superman. Hell yeah! This was the first premiere that I'd ever been to, way back before exclusive previews were the standard for me, and that only amplified my excitement. I'd actually won those tickets, and now I was finally seeing Batman v Superman. There's no reviews out yet, no reactions, no one knows anything about how this is gonna go except for me, because it's Batman v Superman, baby, and I'm hyped as hell. Alright, we're going in. This is actually it. I'm about to see Batman v Superman. I guess I'll see you on the other side. I hated it. I fucking hated it. I don't know if I really felt quite that strong about it at first, but what I did know was that I didn't feel the way I wanted to. I was in shock more than anything. I couldn't process it. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen, and not in a good way. I checked my phone straight away, hoping, no, praying that it was just me. But it wasn't. This was real. I wasn't alone on this at all. It was more like everyone was with me, actually, and that sucked. I stumbled my way through a review that night, barely able to articulate how I felt. I was kind of in denial, just desperately trying to rationalize what I'd seen. There was just this immediate void inside of me, right where I expected my love for this movie to be, and an empty space like that can't stay empty for long. And so it started to fill. I'd already booked my tickets to the midnight opening tomorrow, so hey, maybe second time's the charm. Maybe I'll love it this time. I was wrong. Now I feel it. The fever, the rage. I'm sure of it now. F this movie. F Batman v Superman. F Zack Snyder. Every conversation I have about it, every article I read, every thought that passes through my head, it just consolidates it even more. I hate Batman v Superman. God, I hated it so much. It started out strong with that gorgeous opening sequence, and then before I knew it, bam, I hated just about every single choice it made. Why did Superman have nothing to say or do? Why was Lex the way he was? Why did nothing make any sense? And why in the ass did Batman kill so many people? I'm angry. I'm so fucking angry, and not just at the movie. No, I'm angry at the people that made it. I'm angry at the studio behind it, and now I'm angry at anyone who likes it. I mean, how dare they? It's an abomination and it deserves everyone's resentment. Everyone needs to feel what I feel, and if they don't, they're wrong. I've got so much hate in me right now, so what's the most rational thing to do with all that hate? Go online and spread it everywhere I can. I argue with anyone who liked it, anyone who defended it. I started leaving rage-fueled hashtags on every single post I saw about Batman v Superman. Stuff like, F Zack Snyder, F Warner Brothers, remove Snyder from Justice League, and a very reasonable bring back George Miller for good measure. What else was I to do? What other way is there to respond when a movie wrongs you so completely? How else was I supposed to handle not liking a movie about characters that meant the world to me? I couldn't just forget it and move on. No way! The anger felt good, hating BVS felt right, and so that's how it stayed. It's been weeks now since I saw Batman v Superman. Months even, maybe years. I don't think about it much anymore, and when I do, it exhausts me. Anger is funny like that. It makes you motivated for a while, all passionate and fired up and ready to fight, but after that you just feel awful. You want it to go away. It's been so long since I saw it now that I can't even remember why I hated it in the first place. I just do. It's simpler that way, so that's how it stays. Truth is, I don't think I ever really left that stage. Not until now. See, I've come to find that there's an element of grief in the way that we process movies that disappoint us or let us down, movies we're invested in but found ourselves hating. Looking back at the time since I first saw BVS, I kinda went through the 𝗩𝗛𝗗𝗡𝗢 model of dealing with that grief. I went through denial, I went through anger, and I rode that anger all the way through to depression, but I never moved on. I never let go. I couldn't. I think for whatever reason, BVS matters too much to me. It's too fascinating a thing, too critical a landmark to just purge from my mind, especially when its sheer divisiveness is keeping it smack bang in the middle of the pop culture spotlight all this time later. That and the fact it's about, Batman and Superman, two of, if not the two biggest superhero properties in existence. It's unavoidable. The supposed final stage of grief, according to Kubler-Ross, is acceptance. It's the part where you reconcile with a loss and you can finally say to someone, I'm okay. You don't have to forget the pain, nor should you, but you can finally let go of it and maybe allow it to blossom into something new. So, this is my path to... He looks at me every day. Zack Snyder. Oh boy, if only he knew how I felt about him. If I was gonna change the way I felt about Batman v Superman, I knew I had to start with the man behind it. I've always found the best way for me to come to any understanding about a movie is to make a thoughtful, genuine attempt at understanding the director and the way they see that movie. Who are they? What story did they want to tell? What story do they believe they told? And how did they make it happen? Not that long ago, if you'd have asked me who was at the peak of my list of least favourite directors, I'd have probably said Zack without a second thought. I just didn't like how he made his movies. They're loud and brash and arrogant and nonsensical. I don't like that. That's bad cinema. He's bad. Zack Snyder was at the freaking center of my maelstrom of fury around BVS. He was the person to blame because someone had to be blamed for me hating the movie, right? Well, about that. In March 2017, something happened that started to change the way I saw this guy. Something terrible. Zack lost his daughter. I don't want to get into the background of that because we don't need to, but the fact is, Zack lost a child and he and his co-producer wife Deborah made the decision to step away from Justice League, the Batman v Superman sequel I'd been protesting for the better part of a year. All of a sudden, all my hate and animosity towards this guy, this father, it just evaporated. Every comment, every post, every tirade I'd launched against this storyteller for making a movie I didn't like suddenly came into perspective. This is a human being and he didn't ask for any of this. I still hated BVS at the time, but this twisted fallacy that Zack had made this movie with the intent of hurting anyone, let alone me, it just vanished. The guy made the choices he thought were right in the hope of giving us a movie we'd love, and I was behaving like he killed my dog. Yikes. To my total surprise, I found myself actively defending Zack and his new movie over the next few months as the stories of extensive rewrites and reshoots and all the other Warner Brothers foul play began to develop. Me, defending Zack Snyder. Who'd have thought? I was never pining for the Snyder Cut or anything, but I didn't like what was happening to Justice League at all. The craziest thing was, the more time I spent defending Zack, the more fascinated with him I became. This was an incredibly unique, creative voice that was making movies that so boldly and distinctively wore his artistic signature. His movies are immediately recognizable to me, his trademark aesthetics and storytelling values totally apparent. He also seems to be just an endlessly kind dude, even if I don't always agree with the things he says. Before BVS, the only one of his movies I'd actually seen was Man of Steel, a movie I've had a very on and off relationship with since it first released back in 2013. I'd like to make it clear that that relationship is very on right now and it's looking to stay that way, but that's a story for another day. Maybe. If I wanted to truly understand Zack in order to better understand what he wanted BVS to be, I had to do that by catching up on all of his movies. The whole 2017 tragedy had kicked my empathy back into gear, so the next step was to make some kind of attempt at seeing Zack's work the way he sees it, and to travel the path that led him to BVS. I had myself a spicy little Snyder-thon. Hey, that actually didn't sound as dumb as I expected it to. Holy shit. Holy shit. That was a lot to take in. When we talk about Zack Snyder, we often refer to him as a visual filmmaker, and like, yeah, though that's probably an understatement. I think that under the microscope, Zack's primary goal as a storyteller is to move the story he's helming through the most visually provocative images he and his team can conjure so that he can translate both emotion and spectacle to us in tandem on a grand scale. He can make the most intimate of moments feel huge and the most insane action set pieces feel even bigger. Film is a visual medium, and so the image here is everything. We might all know Zack's movies because of the persistent slow-mo, endless shadows, and outrageous digital camera moves, but what he offers as a director is far greater than the sum of his most noticeable techniques. I don't have the time in this video to go through and review all of his movies, so I'll distill my feelings on them down to this. Under a clear, confident framework on the page, this dude delivers movies I straight up adore. I mean, Watchmen? Huge fan of that. Hell, even without the solid narrative framework, I still had a blast with the batshit crazy Sucker Punch and the borderline morbid animated owl movie for kids? Point being, I no longer saw anything inherently wrong with Zack's filmmaking across those movies. Is he a super literal storyteller that keeps the symbolism and metaphors apparent? Yeah. Does he revel in dark and dead serious material? Sure. Does he have a seeming addiction to elemental hurricanes of fire and lightning and rain? You bet. Does he make a ton of choices I think are totally wild? Yeah. And that's the joy of watching a Zack Snyder movie. Mind you, these were all things I used to loathe about BVS, and now, I was going all in on the Snyderisms. I was celebrating them. This is a storyteller who does things differently, and you know what? I like that. I don't like all of it, especially the times where Zack inadvertently undercuts the thematic storytelling with the visual stuff, or when two different narrative ideas just don't add up for me, but now, finally, I actually appreciate this guy and his totally striking, singular approach to making movies, and that's exactly where I need to be in order to rediscover BVS. So, let's do that. Oh my god, where do I even begin? To say that I feel like I misunderstood Batman v Superman back when I first saw it in 2016 is to put it mildly. Watching it again now, all this time later, it feels like a different movie altogether. So many of the issues I had with the movie at first have been reformed in my mind. So many of the movie's choices that I'd so strongly rejected now get me really, really excited. It's still an enigma of conflicting ideas to an extent, a movie interrogating violence and mayhem that revels in violence and mayhem, but most of the way I'd responded to this movie had been, the movie doesn't do this thing the way I think it should have been done, or doesn't do what I wanted at all, and I got hung up on that rather than ever really exploring what it did do. And once I started doing that, boy oh boy is BVS really something. Don't get me wrong, BVS is always gonna be a gargantuan, unwieldy, incredibly obscure thing to me, but I kind of love it for that. I know this movie gets dunked on for what a lot of us perceive as pseudo-intellectualism, but there's so much here that runs way deeper than I ever gave it credit for. This notion I had that any part of BVS was lazy? Get the hell out of here. Call Zack whatever you want, but lazy ain't it, and any single frame of this movie can attest to that. BVS isn't some studio hack job like Suicide Squad or Justice League, movies that were mangled and warped and rushed out the door because a bunch of businessmen cared more about following trends than telling a singular story. Or was it? See, as much as I loved BVS so much more this time round, as much as I'd come to appreciate so much of what Zack was doing, it was still kind of a mess to me. There's so much that just didn't add up or went nowhere between all the gaps in the story and the murky character motivations. There's a lot I just couldn't rationalize to myself without taking some really huge leaps, and that sorta killed my ability to truly adore it, and that's not what I wanted to do here. So, I guess it's a good thing then that the Ultimate Edition exists, an extended cut that puts back pretty much everything that was removed so that the studio could slash the runtime down to just 2.5 hours, because after seeing that version, there was only one thing on my mind. What the hell did they do to the theatrical cut? The reality is that Batman v Superman never stood much of a chance for me in theaters, not after seeing the version that Zack planned on releasing. It's not without its own problems for me and things that I believe should have been cut, and at over 3 hours, it's just way too long, though it is funny to me that studios seem to be all in on the near 3-hour blockbusters now, huh? Anyway, the Ultimate Edition of BVS feels to me like the edition of BVS. I know director's cut versus theatrical cut is a complex debate for a lot of people, but here's how I see it with BVS. You can't hack off both of a dude's legs and then get mad when he can't run. That's how severely I feel like this movie was hamstrung by its totally massacred theatrical cut.
If you look at this cross-section of the movie, all of this was taken out for the March 2016 release. That's 1/6 of the movie just totally obliterated. In some cases, that can be fine. If you take out the right stuff, you won't know anything's missing and it'll flow a-okay to everyone. Just look at Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. But you take out the stuff that matters, the character, the motivations, the catalyst, and propelling plot factors, and you get what happened here with BVS. God, it's gorgeous, isn't it? Zack shoots the hell out of this sequence just like he does the whole movie. It's bold and weird and f***ing spectacular. It's 𝗩𝗗𝗘𝗢 and it's absolutely the first thing that should have gone. Well, more specifically the flash part, but as a whole, while it does display Bruce's mounting paranoia really effectively, it's just straight up confusing and needless. You might understand it if you know the comics. I mean, I know exactly what it is, but what is its relevance to this exact story I'm watching? That's post-credits type stuff at best, not the kind of thing that goes slap bang in the middle of the movie. To be honest, all of that Justice League setup can go for me. Get the 2.5-minute chunk of Diana browsing metahuman Tinder out of there. As long as she knows she's not alone, as long as Bruce is in on her secret, that's all that matters. Just by cutting those two sequences alone, it saves over 7 minutes of runtime. 7 minutes that could have been used to include critical moments relegated to the Ultimate Edition. Moments like these. Of all the things to break down, why on earth was it the literal setup to over half the story? The actual machinations of this sequence are almost entirely different here, and it changes the entire film. The CIA drone strike, the cavalry, KG Beast burning all the bodies to make it actually look like Superman torched the place, all of that is nowhere to be found in the OG release, and it feels about the same to me as flying to the moon in a shoebox. It just doesn't work. You'd think that actually motivating Clark's growing obsession with Gotham's Bat Vigilante might have been an essential thing to include, but hey, apparently not. I love that the Ultimate Edition actually showed Clark heading over to Gotham to question 𝗩𝗓𝗄𝗓 about her congressional testimony and learning about how the Batman's getting out of control, about how even the innocent now fear his wrath. It actually makes sense to me now that Clark would want to take this guy down a peg. Speaking of 𝗩𝗓𝗄𝗓's testimony, that shit was a lie, brought to you by yours truly Lex Luthor thanks to a little familial threatening. That's kind of a big deal. Actually, a whole lot of Lex's master plan moves back into place in the Ultimate Edition. Those bat brandings that are getting criminals shanked in prison, once again, all paid for and packaged by the weird millennial CEO, photo shoot and all, before being sent the way of Clark Kent, where it rustles a few feathers to say the least. Lois actually gets to go all super sleuth private investigator here as she tries to decipher what really went down in the desert. Her mad pursuit of where that strange bullet came from, oh hi Jenna Malone, actually feels far more driven here because it could be the key to proving Superman's innocence and finding out who set him up. She figures it out too, even if she's a little too late to stop the... No, not that one. This one just kills me from an emotional point of view because Clark actually stayed behind to help get everyone out safe. You know, like we expect Superman would. He doesn't just mess up and bounce, he actively tries to rescue the survivors before he's overwhelmed with guilt and confusion as he stands amidst his failure. And finally, it's small but incredibly significant to me. The public, outraged, scared, and totally confused in the wake of the Capitol bombing, turns on Superman. We're shown an angry mob burning his visage in the street as the media begins to accuse Supes of being complicit in the attack. And that is essential to the entire arc of the story. Why is it not there? Out of everyone, the character dealt the biggest blow by the murder of the theatrical cut is Clark. Imagine a movie where you're half the headliner and you get like 40 lines in the whole 2.5-hour stretch. The initial release of BVS did the Man of Tomorrow dirty, relegating him to the sidelines of his own story, and we will not stand for this. It throws the entire thing way off kilter for me and makes it way less clear which of the two Titans I'm supposed to be rooting for, but when I get back all that was lost in the Ultimate Edition, the son of Krypton and all that he's going through suddenly mattered a whole lot more to me. Here's the conversation at the heart of Batman v Superman. What place is there for gods and heroes in this modern age, and how does their existence change the way we understand the world and our own place within it? One of the biggest criticisms leveled at the Snyder Superman movies, and no, Justice League does not count, is that this Superman is devoid of enthusiasm or joy or just that general spark of positivity that's defined most of the characters' run across comics, TV, and other movies across the last 80 years, and that's not what I'm saying here. See, the world of the DC Snyderverse isn't one that makes room for those things. This is a heightened extension of our own reality, where, yeah, we get all the fantasy sci-fi elements that come from the comics, but where we also have a worldwide 24-hour news cycle flowing from ever-present screens fueled by endless debate over anything that can possibly be debated, because everyone has an opinion on everything, right? Sound familiar? What I'm getting at is, this Superman exists in a world where his actions are under the fiercest of scrutiny by absolutely everyone, all the frickin' time, from everyday civilians to government officials to a bitter old bat living in a cave underground. This feels like the most cynical world to place the most optimistic of our heroes into, and that's why the same ethical and existential questions that BVS is asking about the nature of gods living among us are the same questions that Clark himself is trying to find answers to. It's not that Clark isn't optimistic or capable of joy or hell, even fun, especially when he's with Lois, someone who permeates with the same idealism that he does, but the world that Clark inhabits is one that suffocates all of that under perpetual cynicism. This ain't 1978 anymore. Just think about it. You get a job at a newspaper because if you're an alien god in need of work, you think you might as well try to write some good into the world. You hear about this shady-ass vigilante living in the next city over whose methods are pretty horrifying, and you want to call him out on it, but your boss is just like, "Sport, Clark! The people need to know about the sport!" Damn it, Perry, get off your bullshit. You've got congressional hearings going on over shit you didn't even do, you've got monuments made in your image that you never asked for being defaced just to mock you, the news can't stop criticizing you for trying to stop global catastrophes. I mean, come on. Any of us would just give up and cry in the shower for the rest of our lives over far less. You have, don't lie. And yet Clark is still out here trying to do the right thing, day in, day out. That's the choice he made. He might have a hard time smiling about it, but he's still the embodiment of hope to me. He doesn't owe this world anything, but he'll never give up on trying to do what he believes is right in order to protect everyone he can. That's just the Superman way. Even the most noble, most selfless acts of courage and kindness have consequences, and part of being a hero is learning to live with that. Shout out to the ghost of Pa Kent for that one. But that's it to me. That's the Superman I see in this movie, at least through the Ultimate Edition. I see a Superman in conflict, a Superman that's confused, but he's still Superman, one that believes there's good in people even if his faith may falter, a Superman that's filled with hope despite how the world judges him. He can stand for truth, justice, and the American way, even if people hate him for it. And a lot of us hate this Superman. A lot of us feel that Zack's Kal-El isn't comic accurate, but what does that even mean? After 80 years, a character like Superman has been too many different things to so many different people that there can no longer be some perfect formula for accurately adapting them, and I don't think that storytellers should be expected to make any attempt to do that. They can't please everyone. The reality is, you give a character the general look, the costume, the powers, and any select traits from past iterations, and they are that character. This is still a Superman, even if he's not your one. Hell, he's not even my ideal Superman, but I love that Zack and the writers created a version of the character that's like this. I think that's a large part of the value of BVS for me. It takes these titans, these heroes, these kings and gods, and kind of challenges their existing mythology, and by challenging it, allows that mythology to progress and evolve. These characters are so much bigger now than the comic books and creators that spawned them, so why do we insist that they can only be adjusted and updated on the page and not in film? We get to decide if we want to accept where that new mythology goes, but I don't see anything inherently wrong with presenting a Superman who's struggling with how the people he strives to safeguard perceive him, a Superman seeking the good in people, even if they won't see the good in him, at least until it's too late. We can hate those changes if we want to, but I don't think we should reject the idea of change altogether. Superheroes are our modern deities, comic books are modern scriptures, and if you look back at the gods of the past, those texts, those stories, they transformed over time too. Zeus, Hades, Athena, all those figures became whatever the people who told their stories needed them to be, and we have to allow this modern mythology to do the same, to be dynamic and unexpected and even contradictory, love it or hate it. That's how these characters stay relevant, that's how they endure, here, atop this new Olympus. I'm sure you knew this was coming, but I gotta talk about the ever-aggravating, exceedingly eccentric puppet master of BVS, Lex Luthor, the non-believer. Back when BVS was first released, Jesse Eisenberg's take on the beloved Superman arch-nemesis was received poorly, just to downplay it a bit. Between the fast-talking kookiness and all those unhinged diatribes, Jesse's Lex was dismissed as a miscast deadweight distraction from the Titanic throwdown at the center of the film, just a wannabe Joker knockoff that wandered his way onto the wrong set and got left in the movie. And as I'm sure you've come to expect by now, that's not how I see this version of Lex at all, at least not anymore. Let me make one thing very clear. I don't think Jesse Eisenberg was miscast at all. Quite the opposite, actually. You see, Lex Luthor is more than the sum of a bald head and extreme intellect, and depending on who you ask, a daunting demeanor. Lex's prime factor, at least in his conflicts with Superman, is power, and how the existence of Superman is a threat to that power, and by extension, his insanely overblown ego. Just like everything else in Zack's DC movies, what's the point of doing this character one of the same ways we've seen him done before when the mythology can be played with? Would the most popularized traditional comic take on Lex work here? Yeah, probably, but I don't think that's quite as interesting as an insecure millennial misanthrope with zero empathy that inherited daddy's company and all the wealth that came with it. The reason Jesse Eisenberg was right for this version of the character is for the same reason he was perfect for that version of Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network. This is a dude who's obsessed with being the smartest person in the room, and he'll talk incessantly in "look how smart and knowledgeable I am" riddles just to make sure you can only get a word in when he wants you to.
That is a 3-syllable word for any thought too big for little minds.
Yes, Scott Evil, we get it. You're a genius. When we first meet him, he's Lex, man of the people, a humble figurehead shooting hoops with his employees at the Google headquarters, LexCorp, and it's all just a big wolf in sheep's clothing act. Lex might be rocking this relatable youth demeanor, but everything he's doing is calculated and measured, crazy as he might be, to make sure he always gets what he wants, and the thing that he wants is what exemplifies him as a truly fascinating villain to me. Superman isn't an obstacle for Lex on the way to some sinister, mystic, world-ending goal or a goddamn real estate monopoly. Superman is the goal. Lex wants to hold total power over a god, even if it's just for the briefest of moments. Lex's conquest is to defeat Superman and to demolish any reverence the public has for him, to expose him to the world as a false god, a lie. The people of Gotham don't have a whole lot of love for the Bat, but Superman killing their vigilante king would confirm to the world that he's the kind of authoritarian force that many skeptics believe he is. I can't say that that's the most relatable of ambitions, but that's kind of the point of villains, right? You don't need to agree or condone. You don't even need to understand him, but for a second, try. Imagine what it would be like to be a person like Lex, a person with everything, to be a non-believer, and then to discover that there's a being out there with more power than wealth can buy or intellect can create, and to hold total dominion over that being, to be able to say, I defeated God, I own him, I beat the most powerful being in the known universe, and now the most powerful being is me. It's freaking wild, but I don't doubt for a second that a next-gen megalomaniac Ivy League prodigal son would want that. There's a sense that this cynical, bizarre, corporate kid understands the world presented in BVS better than anyone else in it, and that's why his greatest weapon isn't some giant kryptonite laser or whatever else comic book villains usually cook up. No, Lex's greatest weapon is hate. I guess it all comes down to Lex's doomsday silver bullet in the end, but that was just the contingency plan, a kill what you can't control kind of thing. No, the entire point of the Africa sequence, the Capitol hearings, the bombing, all of those exceedingly complicated machinations are orchestrated by Lex, because if he can make people fear Superman, he can make people hate Superman, just the same as he does. And you know what? It worked.
That's how it starts. The fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel.
Here's the hardest part for me, the part that I've spent the longest time trying to understand. It's hard seeing your heroes fall, to see them stray so far from the light. Batman has always belonged in the shadows, but this Batman, he's different. Hate is a wicked thing. It's a poison, a fever, and it corrupts even the best of us, even Batman. To be honest, hate has always been a fueling factor for the Caped Crusader in all incarnations of the character. You don't see your parents gunned down in front of you as a kid and not harbour some animosity towards the world for the rest of your life. You don't continue to lose those that matter to you and not be filled with at least some self-loathing and resentment. But Batman rarely, if ever, falls into outright apathy like he does in BVS. Bruce's story in this movie is one of detachment and disassociation. He's a pill-popping alcoholic recluse who seems to only live out the playboy billionaire side of his alter ego to go to the places and do the things a vigilante in a mask can't, but it's all to further that Batman agenda. Hi, I'm Batman and I like to party. The degrees of separation between Bruce and Batman here are slim at best. They're one and the same now, or at least the Bat has consumed the man underneath. Batman is no longer the mask. Bruce Wayne is. Wayne Manor lies in ruins. The Batcave is a museum filled with artifacts of Batman's past failures. Bruce is essentially living in a tomb of all the things he's lost, cut off from everyone except hipster Alfred, who even then Bruce seems to ignore. The Dark Knight has made his mind up about the world, and ain't no one, not even the trusty old Wayne Butler, can say anything to change that.
How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way?
Not you, dude. And that's the point here. Hate is a wicked thing. It's blinding like that. Bruce has every reason to despise Superman. The brilliant flip of the Metropolis battle with Zod from Man of Steel at the start of this movie shows that. Superman's inexperience doing the whole defending the world thing led to the leveling of the Wayne financial building, killing all of Bruce's employees inside, some of whom clearly mattered a lot to him. Personal attachment aside, the Kryptonians bulldozed a staggering amount of the city. That's a lot of innocent lives lost. So no shit Batman would be pissed off. No doubt he'd see Superman as a threat to humanity that needs to be removed. No one has ever had that much power before, and that's terrifying. Batman, believe it or not, is scared. Fear makes people do some crazy shit. Fear gives way sooner or later to out and out hatred, and when you mix that into a cocktail of isolation and apathy, well, Batman becomes the bad guy. I think this was the key for me understanding BVS the way I do now. Batman is not the good guy here. By virtue of being Batman, I wanted to believe he was, and of course I did. Batman is my freaking hero, but everything the film does says otherwise to me. Just look at the scene where we first see the Bat in action. It's something ripped straight out of a horror movie. Batman has always been this spectral ghost that haunts the criminals of Gotham, that strikes terror into those he hunts. Batman has always been that predator lurking in the shadows, but this goes way beyond being the boogeyman. This introduction doesn't glorify him as a vigilante hero, it makes him a demon. He's not revered here, he's reviled, and that's how I believe BVS wants me to feel about him.
We're criminals, Alfred. We've always been criminals. Nothing's changed.
Oh, yes it has, sir. Everything's changed.
Hate changed Batman, fear possessed him and drove him to the point of apathetic negligence, to the point of wanting to kill Superman. I refuse to believe that at some point this Batman wasn't like this. I refuse to believe that once upon a time he didn't kill. Because that's the thing here, isn't it? This is a Batman that kills, a Batman who has abandoned his one rule. Can there be a Batman that kills? Without that fundamental governing principle, is Batman still Batman? For the longest time, the answer for me was no, and maybe it still is, unless...
Hey, it's me, HiTop, HiTop Films, the guy who made the video titled Batman Does Not Kill. So why am I here talking about why Batman can kill? What changed? Listen, I still 100% believe that the icon that is Batman is defined by his no killing rule. Batman absolutely, positively should not kill. It's wrong, it feels wrong, and that's the point. That's why I'm here to say that Batman can kill if the story being told is about why he shouldn't. I've done way too much thinking about a movie I vocally am not a fan of, but I guess that's kind of a testament to how thought-provoking Batman v Superman is. I may not love it, or even like it, or even kind of like it, but there is a reason we are still talking about it. And in my thinking about this movie, and particularly Batman in this movie, I've come to the assumption that Batman wasn't supposed to kill like he does in the movie, at least not originally. Hear me out on this one. If you take out all the Zack attackness in the direction of the action scenes, like seriously, why is the Batmobile chase even there? He could... You are left with dialogue, story beats, and a character arc that seems to point to the idea that Batman pretty much doesn't kill at all. Yet, this old and tired Bruce doesn't directly take lives, he just doesn't care if you live or die. He won't kill you, but he doesn't have to save you. Oh, and if you're really a piece of shit like this human trafficker, he'll brand your ass, and hey, it's not his problem if you get shanked in prison.
Criminals are like weeds, Alfred. Pull one up, another grows in its place.
That's how far he has fallen. He used to want to save everybody, but now he thinks just letting these criminals die might be a better way of completing the mission, his mission, which has turned from a one-man war on crime to a fearful, apathetic beast lashing out with unlimited rage. He's fed up and he's losing what made him a hero in the first place. In fact, he's almost lost it completely, but he hasn't yet crossed that line. Not directly at least, but he plans to. Bruce Wayne intends on murdering Superman, not saving him, not branding him and throwing him in prison to die, but straight up looking him in the eye as he drives a spear through his heart. Full-blown, first-degree murder. If Zack had managed to restrain himself with his John Wick Batman, if we didn't have those moments where Bruce pretty clearly mows people down in the Batwing or uses his Batmobile to chop this dude into dust, then the idea that Superman is his first non-collateral kill, his first real murder, is way less murky. If the idea that Batman killing is wrong, gross, and not Batman, which seems to be the original notion the writers had, then him killing actually, can't believe I'm saying this, but it might actually work in this story. It holds the story to being about a fallen hero who is driven by hate to murder someone he doesn't understand out of an irrational fear, rather than being a story about a murdering psychopath adding another number to his kill streak. BVS changes from a movie where Batman murdering people is presented as the status quo to a movie where Batman branding people and being indifferent towards their deaths is a step too far. Batman v Superman becomes a movie where Batman can kill because the story and dialogue are telling us that he shouldn't. And maybe, just maybe, it still is that movie. I think Zack takes it all way too far, but maybe deep down somewhere, that message still holds true. Maybe the horror, the disgust, and the anger I feel witnessing Batman go full Jigsaw on these goons is a good thing. But like I said in the original video, if this Batman hasn't killed before, at that moment when he's about to, at the moment when he's about to irreversibly redefine who he is, it hits us like a ton of bat bricks. Bruce has beat Superman, he's broken him, and now, foot on his throat, kryptonite spear held high, he's going to do it. And then...
You're letting him kill Martha!
This is the moment that changed BVS for me. All of a sudden, all of Bruce's hate and animosity towards this man, this son, it just evaporates. All of the malice, all of the fury, all the bitterness and hostility targeted at one faceless entity that Bruce didn't agree with suddenly comes into perspective for him. This is a human being, and he didn't ask for any of this. Bruce still laments what happened in Metropolis 18 months ago, but the twisted fallacy that Clark had ever acted with the intent of putting anyone in harm's way, let alone people Bruce personally cared about, it just vanishes. Clark made the choices he thought were right in the hope of saving the world, and Bruce was making him the anchor of his wrath as if Clark was the man who killed his parents all those years ago. Yikes. In that moment, with Bruce standing over Clark, kryptonite spear set to strike, I finally understood what this movie is for me. It's a movie about hate. I saw all my anger and malice directed at a filmmaker that never asked for any of it. I saw a guy who just did what he thought was right, what made sense to him, and in that moment I saw all that my rage had made me become. This is the moment that the empathy that makes Batman who he's supposed to be washes back over Bruce, and for that reason, it's the moment this movie hinges on. Hate turns Batman into something he's not, something he, at least as far as I'm concerned, should never be. He might be brutal and reckless, and why, Zack, why did you have to include this shit? But Batman isn't a cold-hearted murderer. Batman can't look a man in the eye, a man who's pleading with him to save his mother, and then lance that man through the heart. It's a lot harder to hate someone when you see their humanity, dehumanized and distilled down to nothing more than a symbol, a token. It's easy to feel true resentment towards someone, to hate them, to wish them harm, but the moment you see them as a human being just like you, the moment you start to empathize with that human being, that's the moment that hate is defeated. This is everything to me because it changes him. Batman changes his mind. Batman
does not kill.
Do people still die after this at the hands of the Bat? Hell yeah, because Zack, bless his testosterone-fueled soul, wants to see that badass, skull-crunching explosive shit, but something has been transformed in Bruce all the same. Clark gave his life to stop Doomsday, and his sacrifice solidifies Bruce's change of heart. His final act in the movie is not branding Lex. Batman is judge, jury, and executioner no more. By the end of the movie, Bruce is no longer resigned to his self-imposed apathetic fate. Clark might be dead, but Lex lost. He tried to turn the world against Superman, to turn Bruce against Clark, to make everyone hate him just the same as he does, but that hate brought people together. It united them and made them stronger, made them see the value in each other as people. I don't care how blurry BVS might feel along the way, that's worth something to me. That's worth a whole freaking lot. Is all of that enough to say that I love Batman v Superman? Maybe. Maybe it is. I'm not saying that I'm sure any of this was intentional. I'm not saying that this is my final definitive take. I'm not saying that I don't wish almost every element of this movie was done in a way that appealed to me more, but fundamentally, I think I really do love all that this movie is, as it is, at least in the Ultimate Edition anyway. Sometimes the reasons we love a movie go beyond immaculate plotting or foolproof logic or flawless execution. Sometimes we love a movie because we read something in it that speaks to us, that resonates, something that changes the way we see ourselves or the world that we live in. It's okay to change your perspective. That's what BVS, this gargantuan, unwieldy, incredibly obscure comic book movie taught me. I saw my hero filled with hate, a hero I've loved since I was a kid, and I saw that hero realize he was wrong and then work to rectify that. It should have been clear to me from the start, from that opening scene that flipped what went down in Metropolis. This movie is about reframing our viewpoint. It's not just the events we're seeing, but the characters, their broader mythology, our own biases, our own processes, our own hate. There's more than one way to look at things, no matter how much we want to believe there's not. I thought I hated Zack Snyder. I did actually, for a really long time, but I don't anymore. I can no longer resent someone for making a movie I disagreed with. Even if I'd come out of this experiment still hating BVS somehow, I'd love this movie for reminding me that artists don't deserve our hate like that. They just don't. So yeah, I feel like I can finally let go of Batman v Superman now. I feel like the years of conflict I've had over this movie can be laid to rest. It took a long time, and I'm not sure if it'll stay this way, but something about the way I see this movie has evolved and reshaped and transformed. I've changed, and now, finally, I feel like I've arrived at Alright everyone, I can't believe it, but we actually made it. I want to start out by saying a huge thank you to all of you for watching this video. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a 3-month process of drafting, writing, rewriting, shooting, recording, and editing to get this video here to you today, right now. So thank you so much for actually watching it. That means so much to me. I want to say a massive thank you to Alex from HiTop Films, who I could not have done this video without. His involvement in the process from start to finish was absolutely invaluable. To have one of my YouTube heroes, this YouTube legend, in this video alongside me, it means so much to me. So thank you to Alex. Thank you, man. I appreciate it so much, and if you guys are not already watching Alex's content, go and subscribe to HiTop Films. If you love the way that I talk about loving things, then you can send some love my way by liking this video, leaving a comment, sharing it with your friends, and of course, subscribing to this channel. If you want to spread some more love, you can follow me on Twitter @Loverboy Media, and if you really, really love what I do here, and you want to help support what goes on this channel, you can support on Patreon. Thank you so much to everyone who is doing that already. I try to give you guys some exclusive rewards as well as early access to just give an extra thank you for that kind of support. I do this full time, I'm barely hanging on, and I could not do it without all of you on Patreon, so thank you so much. Thank you once again to everyone who has watched this video. I honestly just thank you, and I will see you all in whatever's next.